Korea trying to get into Japan, chances are one of the governments is going to catch on, just like they did with Rhonda and Carly.
How do you suppose you got in?
I was there for a few extra days of vacation to actually get to spend a few extra days in Kyoto and Tokyo. What allowed it to happen? Because they were like, oh yeah, he's here just for 6 days. Like, you can come in. Whereas the others were just here for the 3 days. So they're like, oh, you're only here for the days that G7 is happening? So I think that was like probably an extra unintended security.
It's very strange.
It is pretty...
You could be making bombs the other 3 days.
I know, right? It just shows how arbitrary those decisions are.
Well, I remember our colleague Mike Hasty, when he was going to Jeju Island, was actually turned away.
Really?
Yes, at one time. So that was pretty interesting. Of course, when I went, I was a little worried about whether that was going to happen, but it didn't. And,
yeah. But like, you can never know.
Yeah.
Depending on if it's a good day or a bad day for them.
Well, that's a big ticket to put right back on the plane. So,
yeah. I think I'll finish by showing this right here. So when I was in Tokyo, I just spent a little time at the Godzilla store. I was a big Godzilla fan growing up as a kid, so it was kind of a dream of mine to get like, oh, this is so cool. And I got a few of these little posters and like a little book that has like history of Godzilla movies, production. So I'm nerding out a bit. And so I put some on the outside of my door in my bedroom. But this one I decided to put right near my bed. So every morning I'd look at it when I woke up. Because I started, after this trip and seeing what's happening with this massive buildup to war that the US is pushing, I'm seeing this picture in kind of a different light. So what we have here is Godzilla, the main guy, and then we have one of his main rivals, which is Ghidorah, the three-headed monster. It's this like alien dragon from space. And there's all these Godzilla movies from the 60s all the way up until a few years ago where it features Ghidorah and Godzilla fighting. And of course in these movies, it's like these massive monsters and they're just duking it out, and they're always showing people, and the people are terrified because what do you do? Like literally so much of what shows of the people is just them running away, and there's like, you know, cheesy love stories and other things that happen in the shadow of these giant monsters fighting. But what's always implied is that the people can't do anything. Every once in a while that they find something to do to fight back against Godzilla, but there's really, the message is like, nah, don't even try. Just hope that he doesn't step on you. And just wait for one of them to win. And then in the end, if there's nothing left to do, what is the only thing you can do to take out the giant monster? You push the red button and you launch the nuclear strike, which is this picture right here, is what the humans every once in a while do in a Godzilla movie. A lot of people, especially in the US, don't know that Godzilla, the first Godzilla movie in 1956, it might have been in 54, was actually an anti-war and an anti-nuclear movie. Ishiro Honda is the guy who made it, and he saw that H-bomb testings were beginning in the Pacific, and he was horrified. You know, this was not even a decade after, it's like 1954, not even a decade since Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And so he made Godzilla. Godzilla is a like iguana. It is just an animal who, because of H-bomb testing, gets irradiated and becomes a giant monster. And the giant monster comes and starts destroying Kyoto, destroying Tokyo. And it was a metaphor for the horror of nuclear weapons. And there's actually a scene in the original Japanese movie at the end where after they create this sci-fi machine called the oxygen destroyer to suck the oxygen out of the water. That's the only way they can kill Godzilla. And after it happens, this guy looks down at the water and says, if they keep doing these H-bomb testings, we're going to see more Godzillas come up. And then they released the movie in the US and they dubbed it over. so that they took out that quote. The US took out the anti-nuclear part of Godzilla. Now you fast forward to they're remaking Godzilla in like from the American perspective. Just a few years ago, there's another one. And the Ghidorah was there, and Ghidorah killed Godzilla, and they realized, we gotta bring back Godzilla. We gotta bring him back to life to kill Ghidorah. How do they bring back Godzilla? They go to the bottom of the ocean, and they explode a nuclear bomb. And the nuclear bomb feeds Godzilla and brings him back to life, and they all start cheering. So we literally went from 1954 to this anti-war, anti-nuclear horror movie to now we're cheering on the nuclear weapon for saving the day. And
smelling salts for Godzilla.
So this picture reminds me every morning now when I wake up, next to another picture that is reminds me of the massive forest fires that remind me of the climate crisis. This now goes next to it to remind me every day is another fight to stop nuclear destruction. And we do that by fighting it back against the build-up to war. Because the war makers want us to feel like the humans in the Godzilla movies. Maybe one of these is the US and the other is China. And we watch the superpowers duke it out and think there's nothing we can do. And that's not true. And I think just going to Japan and connecting with all of these protesters in Hiroshima of all places, despite all that police presence, despite some of us not even being let in, that's the hope that, our power together is actually more powerful than the militaristic super monsters. And, this to me is the actual monster. This is all just fantasy. And I do think that we can act and galvanize all the people of the world if we really go at it, and to the point where another Hiroshima won't happen. So that is my report back.
Well, the interesting thing right now is there's a new movie coming out, Oppenheimer.
Yes.
You see that? Now they're talking. He's been vindicated, and he was attacked, during the McCarthy era. But why all of a sudden now? And are they rebranding it? I mean, he may well have been. The thing is there's all this talk about possibly using nuclear weapons. Tactical nuclear weapons.
You put a nuke on a drone and you just send it out.
Well, also they're putting nuclear weapons already in the form of
depleted uranium.
What am I trying to say, Dan?
I said depleted uranium, the dirty bombs.
Uranium, yes. And there's mutations all over Iraq from that. A lot of evidence that they blow these shells up and there's dust all over the place, causing mutations galore. Our own troops as well as civilians. That's a sleeping nuclear weapon right there. And we're sending it over. Now we're stepping it up with cluster bombs.
Yeah, and who knows if those cluster bombs aren't even decked out in depleted uranium.
It could be.
We did just come out with a statement through Resist also against that. So I'll send that to you if you want to send that around.
Good.
I find it mind-boggling that anybody could have the idea, not to mention how many people have to say yes before it happens, to use that expended uranium for any purpose at all. I mean, that would be around people. But to send it out to get blown up, just because it's a good way to make a hole in a tank. I find it mind-boggling that people could think like that. On the other hand, there are people who think that having a bunch of nuclear weapons isn't enough, that you have to have thousands. Who could possibly?
That's the logic.
I saw in mainstream media, I think it was CNN or one of those, that the depleted uranium shells
Depleted. Yeah.
were not dangerous to handle, and there was no danger and stuff of that sort, which is totally false.
Mm-hmm.
But mainstream media is peddling it that way. It's sleeping atomic bombs right there.
Mm-hmm.
They take whatever the government hands them.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, there's also another point there. Commercially, there's a big problem with trying to get rid of depleted uranium. Well, there's a commercial outlet for it, and charge Uncle Ted prices for it to boot.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well.
Well, you've seen plenty of explosions, and you've been exposed yourself.
Yeah.
That is true. I witnessed some 32 atomic airbursts from a distance of about 22 miles.
How many?
22 miles.
No, how many bursts?
32.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
I was thinking it was 33, but I read some documentation said there was only 32, but I was there for all of them. Dosimeters, film badges, all that stuff, and they said, hey, you're safe. A little later on, why I had half a thyroid just misbehaving and growing, and I found later that's one of the first symptoms of radiation poisoning. Hey, nuclear bombs are bad.
Mm-hmm. And on that note, there is a kind of brewing campaign locally here I did want to let y'all know about. Do y'all know about the local company NewScale Energy?
No.
It's a
I'm not up on that.
It's a nuclear power company. They have an office here in Portland. Their main research facilities have been at OSU, down in Corvallis, where they actually have a small modular reactor on campus for research purposes. And so the Department of Energy and the Department of Defense have their own offices on OSU campus because of this. They have been researching these, again, kind of like tactical nuclear weapons, small modular reactors that are like a safer version of nuclear power.